Hey everyone, my name is Carlos and I'm the founder and CEO of Product School. Today we have a special guest on the show. Her name is Reyana Fayazz and she's a product lead at Asana. So we're going to talk about how to break into product, all things product, and also I want to talk a little bit more about diversity in product and how we can empower more women product leaders to have a voice in the product industry. So hey Reyana, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm
Thanks
good.
for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. So let's get things started. How did you start thinking about product or just tech in general?
Yeah. So I actually wasn't thinking about product or tech. When I was in undergrad, I was studying finance and I really thought I wanted to work on Wall Street until I started interviewing for Wall Street positions and I realized I did not see myself there at all. And so I ended up taking a role in insurance product management, which is very different from tech. And so I realized I liked parts of product management, but I didn't love auto insurance. Was not my passion, surprisingly. And so I was kind of bored at work and I taught myself how to program in Visual Basic, and I liked that way more. And then I ended up getting into grad school to study computer science at a concentration in computer graphics and game technology. So yeah, I wasn't really thinking about tech until I started like building games and like really thinking about how much I just loved creating experiences that people loved. And then when I was in school, I heard about, product management and tech, where you can actually do that as a job, which was amazing. And that's when I found my first gaming startup in the Bay. So I moved across the country and I started working as a product manager in a mobile games company.
So wait a second. So you are interviewing for companies in Wall Street, and then at some point you think that it's not for you. Thank God you did it before you got that. And then
Yes.
how do you switch gears and get a company to hire you as a product manager without technically product management experience?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, yeah, because my title was product manager for 3 years, but when tech was like, no, that doesn't count, like that is a different kind of thing that we do here. So I think, having a technical degree was a little helpful, but I think what was really great about getting into tech was that I started at startups. I didn't try and get the whale of Google or Amazon at the time. I was really just looking for a team I clicked with and a product I felt passionate about. And so I think I still went through 7 rounds of interviews for an internship role as a product manager. But they were mostly just like, who are you? What do you care about? And I think was, again, like if you find a place where you click with the people and the product, you'll work harder, you'll learn more. And I think that's I showed my desire and potential more than I had a wealth of experience.
And then you say, okay, I want to start my own company in a video games industry. So guide me through that process, because I've seen a lot of PMs who go out and build their own companies. I've also seen a lot of founders who end up working as PMs at larger organizations.
Yeah, so I didn't start my own company, not yet. But I did build some games. So it was more just like a side hustle. It was more for fun than anything. I would say I've also seen people start things and then come back, and it's a cycle. You can kind of do what you want. It really depends on the climate and the funding that you can get, but anyone can start a side hustle, which I think is great. And then if it does pan out to be something that you want to pursue full time, personally, I haven't found something that I want to pursue full time yet, but you can, and that's kind of great.
I'm glad you bring this up, because sometimes it's not just about officially starting a company. It's really about starting something that you like. And then if that pans out and turns into a full-time company job, fantastic. But, I actually encourage a lot of people who are thinking about building products to not ask for permission and build their own personal website or video game or whatever it is.
Right. And that's actually really, I think about the first time I actually had experience building software, I was hacking my MySpace page. I was trying to figure out how to have more than top 8 friends. And I was like, I'm going to have 16 friends, which obviously there's a reason they made that choice not to do that. But if you can just go out and do what you want and figure out how you would build something. And that's really the cornerstone of what makes a good product manager. And that way you don't have all that risk of how do I find funding? How am I going to pay for my rent in San Francisco? And yeah, you just get to enjoy the good benefits of doing that.
So let's also talk about a typical San Francisco thing, which is, or you have to fall in, as a PM, you have to fall in love with the problem and not so much with the solution. So for you specifically, what are some of those themes or things that you like to do that you're so passionate about?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many. I think the two that are top of mind for me now are one, like, I mean, obviously we can't travel during COVID, which is a bummer, but one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is like how to make planning travel and finding these like once in a lifetime experiences easier and fun. As a product manager, and I'm sure most of the listeners who are product managers we're planning people, so it's kind of just like part of our nature. But like, you know, when you're going on group trips, when you're like trying to plan trips with family, how do you like crowdsource that work and make it seem like something that they would want to do and make it easy for them? Because it doesn't come, like these kinds of organizational skills and stuff like that don't come easy to a lot of people. So gamifying travel planning is something that I'm really interested in solving for. And then the sort of more meta problem I've been thinking about is technology fatigue. Which is like, you know, when technology first came about, it was like there was so much wonderment, there's so much excitement about what we can do, like signing up for your first email address. That was some really, I mean, I'm really dating myself, but it was a really exciting time. And I think now we're seeing a lot of the dark side of technology, which is like insecure data, always being on, like the big brother is watching me, these kinds of concepts. And so in a more meta way, I really want to think about how we can kind of get back to that excitement and like the good side of tech. There are really good things here and really good problems we're trying to solve for, and just finding ways to get back to that.
That sounds fantastic. I don't even know if that's possible. Right? Like we went
Anything is possible, right? If we put our minds to it. I don't know. It's definitely difficult because there's so much that's just like building blocked on top of each other, but hopefully one day.
So what do you think are other myths and misconceptions around product people?
Around product people?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I think that's a really good question. I think, you know, being a product manager, you know, there's always that like trope that like product managers don't do anything, that they just talk a lot, which I'm not helping my case because I'm just talking a lot right now, or that we only make PowerPoint decks. But there's so much that goes into being a good product manager. So I would say the myth that's wrong. You actually have to have a lot of skill in like, you know, data analysis and design and having conversations that are intellectual with all these different functions, which means that you need to have some level of expertise in all these different areas. So yes, the product managers are worth something and we do more than talk, although how we communicate is also one of our greatest assets.
And
go ahead.
To be fair, I think being a storyteller and learning how to communicate is extremely underrated. Like I started computer science, I had 0 classes and presentations, and that's all I do every day. And I mean, like, I want people to think that we do more than just talking, but it's a big part of it. And it's not just opening our mouth, it's communicating in different forms, right?
And figuring out how other people communicate and meeting them there. I would say I also have a more like artistic technical brain, so that was a really like hard skill. I'm still learning it, right? Because everyone's different and like execs are completely different from like the people that you work with on your team every day. So like, do you talk in bullets? Do you like reach out to them at a certain time? Like you have to be very careful for how you present, because sometimes you only have one shot to get an idea across and it could be like make or break for your user. And so how you do that is almost more important than like how you build it at sometimes.
I agree with you. And I've spoken with a lot of PMs, and one of the general themes that was always about how can you control the way you deliver, so hopefully it lands the right way, and kind of checking the way it lands, because obviously, especially when you have so many different teams in the same room or virtual room, the way an engineer might interpret one of your decisions might be very different than the way a designer interprets that. And at the end of the day, you are kind of in the middle trying to make sure that it's not that pleasing each other, but like make sure that everyone understands what's going on and why.
And that's why building one-on-one relationships is so important with your entire team, because everyone communicates differently, because everyone understands differently. And so what you say in a big meeting won't be received, like you said, the same way by everyone.
And I want to bring up another interesting topic that I've seen in the product space, specifically, not just in tech, which is like bringing more diversity into products. And I think that also starts from bringing product builders who also bring those perspectives. Specifically, I am really pushing to feature and highlight more women product leaders like yourself. So why do you think that, what can we do to continue highlighting women product leaders and bring more diversity into product?
Yeah. I mean, this is the question that we all ask ourselves. Hopefully all of us are asking ourselves regularly. And, I'm not an expert, but I think that there are sort of two main things that do make it difficult. And I would say the solution is partly understanding what the problem is, right? That's the product way. And so I think broke down the problem into two parts, right? I think it's like entering the workforce and then advancing within the workforce. And so when we think about entering tech, especially for women and women of color and just underrepresented minorities in general, a lot of it can be like just getting a foot in the door. And this can be anything from, the problem could be like recruiters can be biased and discouraging. For example, in my personal experience, I had a master's CS degree from Penn, and I was interviewing for a startup, and they wouldn't even consider me for an intern engineering position because the women in the startup tend to be project managers. And so obviously that's just my personal experience, but hearing stories from other women is like very similar things where it's just like, you don't look like the rest of our tech force. And so you probably don't fit here. And so when we think about like representation, which is also a piece of it, is it can feel like a barrier in more ways than one. And then I think advancing in tech as well, like you see, like I would say for product positions, at least in some of the companies I've worked for, there are like a higher percentage of women than engineering per se. But when you're thinking about advancing, a huge piece of that is sponsorship. And so to be sponsored, you need somebody above you who's going to like kind of pull you up with them. And in leadership, the percentage is not as generous. And so I think when you see like a very heavy male dominated like leadership team, and there's some rules at some companies which are like, you need 5 directors to vouch for you to move up. If all those directors are male and there's like a male counterpart to you, like you're almost at a disadvantage. And so I think these are just like some of the ways that we have these barriers. And so like if we can figure out how to topple those, blind hiring practices or increasing equality in leadership and gender representation and racial representation. I think those are some of the things that we can do to make it better.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking a lot about, and obviously one step that in our case we're taking as part of the product community is to bring awareness, is to really try to share stories of people who did it and ask them to share them with the next generation. But I'm always trying to kind of take that next step and pushing it harder. And I think especially now, it's important to do that extra effort. Yes, it's maybe it's more complicated to create that type of equality and inclusion in a lot of the events or classes or other initiatives that we do, but it's totally worth it, and hopefully that creates some inertia. So, more people start without thinking so much about it.
Right. And it starts with a conversation. So I love that. I think that's incredibly helpful. And I think you could even take it a step further and ask some of the men on these fireside chats too, what they think about gender representation and how they actually do that on a daily.
Definitely. Another question I have for you personally as a product leader. So you shared the story about how you broke into the role, but how were you able to grow? Like, what are some of the skills that you think that served you well?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. And it's funny because it's like, your career is so long, so you're always working on something. But I would say, like we kind of touched on it a little earlier, but communication, figuring out how to talk to the different people in the right way and like how they respond, I would say are incredibly important. I would say starting out, there's some more like tactical things to learn as well, like data analysis, being able to actually commission the right data, figuring out how to have strategic insights from that is super helpful. And then championing that across your org. I think that usually takes a little bit more like daring and sometimes a little bit more confidence. But like as you build that up and you are the sort of person that's championing both data analysis and like user research, people will start looking to you more as an expert. For me, it was mostly just figuring out, I think early on, again, I was so like, if I build the best product, like this will be the only thing I need to do. But that didn't really serve me very well for that long. So yeah, I would say exec presence, soft skills, negotiation, and relationship building.
And I guess learning never ends. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you are a curious mind, and you have the ability to kind of learn different things fast. So what are you learning these days?
Gosh, great question. I'm focused right now on, well, product wise and like outside of product wise, but in terms of like my workplace, I'm really deeply focused on how to align strategy across teams. So like thinking about all the different goals our teams have and like what we can do to leverage all this talent to actually achieve something on like a grander scale. So like how do we develop a strategy that crosses a bunch of teams that you don't own as an IC? Like I feel like that's a really challenging thing to do and kind of something I'm excited about. But outside of the workplace, I'm also really excited about learning about wine, actually. So I was thinking about getting a certification to become a sommelier. But in the meantime, I'm taking the masterclass on wine appreciation, which has been awesome. And then I'm also taking a masterclass in interior design. So highly recommend masterclass. I'm not paid to promote it, but it is a great way to learn some things and from real experts.
Definitely. Hey, I'm a big believer in lifelong learning, and I think that whatever makes you happy, it's gonna somehow. I'm sure you'll end up finding a way to connect the dots and do something with it, in addition to getting the certification.
Yes, we'll see. So, wine makes everyone happy, right?
So another thing that's very top of mind now, it's a career within product, because sometimes I feel that people get pushed too much to become a people manager. And okay, you are a PM, technically you start as an individual contributor, but what if you want to continue working as an individual contributor and be rewarded for that? How do you think about different career ladders for product people?
Yeah, I love this question. And it's been top of mind for me for some time now. I think, when we think about the ladder of success, it's like, okay, I want to be a CEO one day, right? So like, how do I take those steps backwards? And so it's like, okay, well, below that is like head of product maybe. And then before that is like director, group, whatever it is, all these steps. But if you think about all of those roles, they're all like management roles. And so I think like as product managers, we're incentivized to become managers. And I think if that is your path, that's amazing. I think something in my career that I've been bouncing between is IC and manager and trying to figure out like how you can kind of have the passion and like the actually owning customer problems, right? Because as an IC, you own the customer problems. And as a manager, you're kind of unblocking your team and making sure that you can have sort of more impact at scale. And so I would say I've seen people in management positions that were amazing ICs and probably not as great managers. And I've seen great managers who were like not that great ICs. So I think if you're presented with a decision, like there's so many factors to weigh in, but like do what actually makes you happy at the end of the day, and that is like the ultimate success.
And I think part of the problem as well here is that the incentives sometimes are not aligned. So people who manage other people tend to be compensated more than say a principal product person who is incredible. And they
Right.
just, this person doesn't want to be a manager, but somehow you end up making a poor decision to lose a good individual contributor and gain a bad manager just because, you know, there's a different incentive. I think
Yeah.
in engineering, I've seen it so many times, like, oh, this guy's an amazing engineer, let's make him or her CTO. And like, you ruin the entire thing.
Totally. And it's just like, how do we fix that? That's maybe that's another problem I'm passionate about fixing, but like, how do we align the incentives so that the people in these roles are actually set up for success and actually helping do the function? But yeah, it's very interesting.
So what would you say for people out there who are listening to you saying, wow, Reyana is amazing. She's doing so many cool things. How can someone get started and start, you know, playing around with the idea of, I wouldn't even call it becoming a product manager, but at least getting your hands dirty?
Yeah. I mean, I used to think that, you know, there were so many barriers to like achieving these things, right? Like building cool products, like just starting. And I often told myself when I first started that I was like, oh, you know, like I just don't have the tools or I don't have the team. I can't do it on my own. And it's just so not true. Like even the example of like, I really wanted to build video games and I didn't have a technical degree. And I was like, oh, I guess I can't build them. It's like, you can build a board game. Like you can make a card game. Like you can actually like find like really creative ways to like get the end results. And like, honestly, I think that pretty much defines like what a great PM can be, is like, can you be creative and find ways to achieve your problems like without like, given all the constraints that you have. So I would say if you're trying to get your hands dirty, just try something that like gets you a little bit closer, figure out what you're trying to achieve. And you'll find that there's also a lot of people around the way that will help you. And so I used to want to go at it alone all the time. Biggest mistake. Took me so much longer, I think, to like figure out what I was doing because I was too proud to ask for help. So 100% recommend, like, if you're in school, like turn to the person next to you. They might know the answer. They might want to create the next thing that you drop out of school to create. Not promoting that, but yeah, people are around to help you, and just try and figure it out. You can do it.
I like that. That's encouraging. Like asking it doesn't hurt. Like, what's the worst thing that you can get, right?
Right. And I have to say, like, I was not when I got my technical degree, I did not have a background in anything technology. And so literally that's what I did. I turned to the next person next to me. I was like, do you want to do this hackathon? I can do absolutely nothing except get coffee and like write copy. And that person is like my best friend now. And if we ever started a company, it would be with him. So you never know.
Well, thank you so much for being in the show with us. It's been great to hear your story, to learn from you. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, thank you so much for having me. I would say I'm really excited that you're putting a focus on getting diverse candidates and like just diverse people on the show. And yeah, I think like let's keep this conversation going. Everyone deserves an equal chance.
Thank you so much, Reyana. Bye.
Thank you.